Nadia Osei packed one bag. That was all she had left. One bag, one pair of good shoes, and a receipt from the funeral home that she folded into her coat pocket like it was something precious. Her mother had been buried 4 days ago. The landlord was coming Friday. And somewhere across the city, in a building that had its own name on a map, a man she had never met was waiting for her to become his wife. She did not cry on the drive over. She had used up her tears at the cemetery, and anyway, there was no space in her chest for grief right now. Grief was a luxury. Survival was not. The envelope had come 10 days before her mother passed. Thick paper, official seal, a name at the bottom she did not recognize. King Zion Dakarai, head of the royal Dakarai household. Inside, a single page explained, in very formal language, that her father had entered into a binding agreement with the Dakarai family 18 years ago. A debt of loyalty, land, and blood. The terms were simple. When the time came, a daughter of the Osei line would marry into the Dakarai household. Her name had been written into that contract when she was 6 years old. Her father had died when she was 9. Nobody had told her about the contract. Nobody had told her a lot of things. She could have refused. She understood that. She was not stupid. But she was also sitting in an apartment with 12 days left on the lease. No job, no savings, and a mother's medical debt that would take her a decade to clear on a good salary. The Dakarai family had offered, in exchange for her compliance, full payment of all debts, a monthly income, and housing inside the palace grounds. It was not a love story. It was a transaction. She went into it clear-eyed and told herself she was fine with that. The palace was not what she expected. She had pictured something cold, all marble and distance. But the building she was brought to was old in a way that felt lived in. Thick walls, dark wooden floors, windows that let in more light than she thought windows were allowed to let in. A woman named Mrs. Addo, who had the energy of someone who had been efficiently managing chaos for 30 years, showed her to her rooms and said dinner would be at 7, and the king would receive her at 8. At 8, Nadia followed Mrs. Addo down a long hallway and into a room that smelled like old books and coffee. A man was sitting behind a desk. He did not look up immediately. When he did, Nadia's brain did something inconvenient. It noticed that he was, objectively, the most structured human face she had ever seen in person. Strong jaw, dark eyes, the kind of calm that was not actually calm, but was control so practiced it looked the same. She told her brain to be quiet. It partially listened. "Miss Osei," he said. "Mr. Dakarai," she said, because she was not going to say Your Majesty in the first 30 seconds of knowing someone. She would work up to that. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile. He told her the terms. His voice was level and businesslike. The marriage was in name only. She would have her own quarters, an allowance, access to the household staff. She would attend state functions at his side and behave, publicly, like a wife. Privately, they would live separate lives. He would not impose on her time. He expected the same courtesy in return. He did not ask if she had any feelings about this. He asked if she had any questions. She thought about it. "Do I have access to the library?" A pause. "There is a library, yes." "Then I have no questions." He looked at her for a moment, like someone trying to place a sound they had not heard before. "Good," he said. She went back to her rooms, lay on a bed that was nicer than any bed she had ever slept in, and stared at the ceiling. She told herself this was fine. She had survived worse than a quiet palace, and a man who did not look at her. She had survived a lot of things. The first 2 months were exactly what had been agreed. Nadia kept to herself. She found the library on her 3rd day and spent more time in it than was probably appropriate. It was 3 rooms deep and smelled like a place where serious people had come to think for a very long time. She reorganized sections of it because the organizational system made no sense, and the activity gave her something to do with her hands and her mind at the same time. She also noticed, without trying to, small things about the king. He worked late. Every night, the light under the study door was still on at 11. He drank too much coffee. He never ate dinner. He had a younger sister who visited every 2 weeks, and was the only person in the palace who could make him look, for a few minutes, like a person, rather than a position. She did not know why she noticed these things. She was not interested in him. She was not there to be interested in him. Still, he never ate dinner. On the third week, without really deciding to, she asked the kitchen to send a second plate to her rooms at night, and then left it outside his study door at 11. Just set it on the floor, knocked once, and walked away. He never mentioned it. She kept doing it. He kept eating it. The library was where they first had an actual conversation. She had been there past midnight, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a cup of tea going cold beside her, when the door opened and he came in. He stopped when he saw her. She looked up. Neither of them said anything for a moment. Then he walked to the far side of the room, picked a book off one of the shelves she had not yet reorganized, and sat in the chair by the window. He read. She sorted. An hour passed, maybe more. She became aware, slowly, that she was not uncomfortable. She could not remember the last time she had sat in a room with another person and not been uncomfortable. He left without saying good night. But the next night, he came back, and the night after that. The state dinner happened in the 4th month. It was a long table, important people, the kind of evening where every sentence had a second sentence hiding inside it. Nadia had gotten decent at these events. She knew how to dress, how to speak when spoken to, how to smile at the right degree. Then a woman, the wife of one of the senior ministers, well-dressed, 3 glasses into the evening, leaned across the table and said in a bright tone, "Miss Osei, or I suppose it's Madame Dakarai now, I've always wondered, what does it feel like, being the payment on your father's bad debt, being handed over like a piece of old property?" The table went quiet. Nadia set down her fork. She looked at the woman. She took a breath, and then, very quietly, she said exactly what she thought. She was not loud. She did not raise her voice. She simply said, with complete clarity and no particular emotion, what kind of woman uses another woman's grief as small talk, and what that said about the quality of her character, and how she hoped the minister's wife would enjoy the rest of her evening. She picked up her fork. She continued eating. Across the table, she did not look at Zion, but she felt him looking at her. Later, outside, she sat on the palace steps in the cold, because she needed air, and the night was the only thing available that was not full of people. She heard the door open behind her. She did not turn around. He sat down next to her, in his very expensive formal suit, on the stone steps, in the cold. He did not say anything useful. He just sat. After a long time he said, "My father wrote the contract. I was 10 years old. Nobody asked me either." She turned and looked at him. He was not looking at her. He was looking out at the dark garden, jaw set, like the words had cost him something, and he was already regretting spending them. She turned back to the garden. "That's the most you've said to me at one time," she said. "Yes," he said. Another silence. The good kind. The kind that did not need to be filled. Something shifted after that night. She could not name it precisely. It was not dramatic. It did not announce itself. It was more like the way temperature changes. You do not notice the exact moment the room gets warmer. You just notice, at some point, that you are not cold anymore. He started leaving the study door open. She started walking past more slowly. Sometimes she stopped and said something, and he would respond, and they would talk, and she would realize halfway through that she had been standing in the doorway for 40 minutes. He told her, one night, about the first council meeting he had chaired after his father died. He had been 23. He had not known what he was doing, and had been too proud to say so, and had made a decision that cost his family politically for 2 years. He told it like a report, not a confession, but he told her. She told him about her mother's last week, how she had sat by the hospital bed and read to her from a book about plants her mother could not actually hear anymore, probably, but she kept reading, because stopping felt like giving up. They were, she thought, 2 people who had gotten very good at feeling things quietly. The papers arrived in the 10th month. She had known they were coming. The original contract had a 12-month term. After that, she was free. Full financial independence. All debts cleared. Her name removed from the household. A clean ending. She looked at the papers for a long time. She put them in her desk drawer and did not touch them again. She told herself, it was because she had built a life here. The library, her work with the local education council, which she had started in the 7th month, because there were children in the district who needed reading support, and she was good at organization. Her routines, the palace, improbably, had started to feel like hers. She did not examine the other reasons too closely. Zion found out from his chief advisor. He came to find her in the library. He stood in the doorway for a moment and then walked in and sat across from her. He asked, "Are you leaving?" She said, "I haven't decided." He was quiet for a moment. His hands were very still on the table, which was how she had learned to tell when something was costing him effort. Then he said, "I would like you to stay. Not the arrangement suits us. Not it would be more convenient. Not any of the dozen careful, reasonable things she had learned to expect from him. I would like you to stay." She looked at him. He was looking back at her with his face completely open for once, and she could see that saying it had been hard, and he had said it anyway, and he was not going to take it back. Her chest did something that she had no good word for. She sat with it for 3 days. She walked around the palace. She sat in the library at midnight. She looked at the papers in the drawer. She thought about the woman she had been when she packed that one bag. Careful, practical, determined not to want anything she could not carry. She thought about the night on the steps, the cold, the sound of him sitting down without being asked. She thought about 11 o'clock and a plate of food left outside a door, and how it had never been about food. Not really, not once. On the 4th day, she went to find him. He was in the study. The door was open. She stood in the doorway. He looked up. She said, "I stayed because I wanted to, not because of the contract, and not because of the allowance, and not because I had nowhere else to go, because I could have found somewhere else. I stayed because of the library and the cold steps and you eating soup off the floor at 11 at night without ever once saying thank you, and because you told me about the council meeting, and because one time you sat next to me when I was not okay and you didn't need me to be okay. That was the first time in my adult life someone did that." She stopped. Her voice was steady, which surprised her. "I'm not leaving," she said, "but I need you to know that I'm staying for me. Because this is mine now. You're mine now, if you want to be. Not because of a piece of paper." He stood up. He walked around the desk. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she had to look up. He said, "I have been trying to figure out how to say something to you for 4 months. I could not find the words." "You don't have to find them," she said. "You just have to stay in the room." He took her hand. She let him. Outside the window, the garden was dark and still. Inside the study, 2 people who had come to each other through debt and loss, and 12 months of careful, quiet, entirely unplanned closeness, stood in the good silence they had built together. She had married him to survive. She stayed because she had finally, for the first time in her life, found something that was completely and entirely hers. And he, the man who had been told from boyhood that needing someone was the one thing a king could not afford, stood in his study, holding a woman's hand like it was the most important thing he had ever held. He had not expected to fall in love. He had fallen anyway, completely, quietly, without a single word of warning. The way all real things happen,